Right now, I want to turn to the current discord and strife between Israel and Egypt. The words Egypt, Egyptian, and Egyptians occur 850 times in the Bible. There are approximately 250 verses in the Old Testament, which at the time they were given were prophecies of events yet to take place in Egypt. Now, most of those have been fulfilled, but many of them remain unfulfilled. And this point alone makes Egypt a very important place in Bible prophecy. Now, let me begin with just a couple of very quick points about Egypt's past. Egypt, of course, has a glorious past, the time of the pyramids and the pharaohs. My wife and I think I've mentioned this on the programs before. My wife and I had the privilege about a year ago to go to Egypt and spend 2 weeks there. And it has a glorious past. It's a land of tombs and temples. Massive, unbelievable temples there. It's first mentioned back in Genesis chapter 12. Egypt is the oldest arch enemy of the Jewish people. They're the oldest enemy that Israel has. They're the longest standing inveterate enemy of the Jewish people. Now, let's fast forward to modern times. Well, let me just add this. They're the people that held Israel in captivity for 400 years. So they're a long standing enemy of the Jewish people. Now, fast forwarding to modern times, Egypt was one of 6 nations that attacked Israel in 1948 when Israel was declared a modern state, tried to wipe them off the face of the earth. Egypt fought against Israel in 1956 in the Suez War. Egypt fought against Israel in the Six-Day War in June of 1967. They fought against Israel in the Yom Kippur War in October of 1973. Now, after all this fighting, finally in 1979, Egypt was the first, and at that time the only Arab nation, the first for many years, to make peace with Israel. And Anwar Sadat was the Egyptian leader who brought that to pass. It was part of the Camp David Accords, where Jimmy Carter was able to broker between Israel and Egypt. Now, later Jordan, the nation of Jordan, followed in 1994 to make peace with Israel. Of course, other nations, other Arab nations joined in with the Abraham Accords during President Trump's first presidency. But Israel's peace with Egypt has been a major boost to Israel. Israel has Hamas on their west. They have Hezbollah in the north. They have Iran to the north and the east. They have the Houthis to the far south. And they have Egypt right there on their southern border, but not having to watch and protect that southern border as vigilantly is a huge benefit for Israel. It's a massive benefit that they don't have to expend a lot of resources to defend that border. It's really been a huge game changer for Israel in their defense, not to have to worry about fighting against Egypt. But this peace with Egypt seems to be fraying a bit. Israel's war in Gaza has strained the relationship, and Egypt right now is clearly kind of agitating Israel. In a publication called Israel Hayom, a headline says, Israel confronts Egypt over major peace treaty violation. The article says this, or the subtitle says, although Israel has noticed a spike in troop levels in recent months in Sinai, the new concern is much less reversible measures, infrastructures being built in the peninsula. Israel is calling what's happening a major violation. The article says this, Israel is committed to preserving the Egyptian peace agreement, but an Israeli senior official stressed that Israel remains committed to preserving the peace agreement, but has no intention of altering its military deployment along the Egyptian border. He added that Israel will not accept this situation. The Jerusalem Post has a fascinating article, and the title is, Egypt warns military buildup in Sinai threatens peace with Israel. The article says this, Egypt has deployed forces beyond the permitted quota, extended port facilities, and extended runways at airports. The source added that these actions violate the peace agreement between the two nations. So it's interesting, trouble is brewing. There's a showdown there on the horizon. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Egyptians may see Israel distracted right now on multiple fronts and think, hey, this is a good time to kind of make some gains, believing that Israel doesn't have the manpower or the willpower right now to deal with these incursions and treaty violations. Now, here's something I think that's very interesting and important to remember. The Egyptian people, for the most part, have no love for the Jewish people or for Israel. As I mentioned earlier, I was just there a year ago, and I talked to a lot of different people about this, their view towards Israel. And the people that I talked to, and again, I'm not saying this is all Egyptians, the people I talked to hated the Jewish people. There's no doubt about that. So they have a peace agreement, but there's no love between these nations at all. In fact, anti-Israel incitement in Egypt is common. A recent survey found this: 75% of Egyptians now view Hamas positively. The majority of Egyptians continue to reject ties with Israel and Israelis. 85% oppose the diplomatic recognition of Israel. So what exists right now between Egypt and Israel is not so much peace as it is lack of war. So the lid's kind of being kept on the pressure cooker, but it can't be held down forever. Now, I don't know what might happen with Egypt and Israel in the short term, but the Bible's clear about the future. So I want to just take a moment here. And again, I'm going to mention several passages. And I'd encourage you to go look these up on your own. But I want to just talk about Egypt in the tribulation period. What's going to happen between Israel and Egypt in the future in the tribulation? This is just a quick survey or rundown. Egypt is called in Daniel 11:40 the king of the south. And it says there in Daniel 11:40, they're going to lead a great North African confederacy, I believe, against Israel in the tribulation period. This confederacy will include Libya and Sudan, two of the nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So I think Egypt very well may be part of the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion, because it says there that the king of the north, which is Russia, and the king of the south, which is Egypt, and Egypt's allies are going to attack the Antichrist. Now, I think they're actually going to attack Israel because, remember, the Antichrist is going to have a treaty with Israel guaranteeing Israel's peace. So these nations are going to attack Israel, but an attack against Israel will really be an attack against the Antichrist, because he's going to be the one who's guaranteeing Israel's peace. And Egypt's army then is going to be destroyed by God. Let me read here in Isaiah 19 and verse 16 what it says. In that day, it's looking to the future time of the tribulation, the day of the Lord, the Egyptians will become like women, and they will tremble and be in dread because of the waving of the hand of the Lord of hosts. He's going to wave it over them. This is the destruction of their armies, I believe. And the land of Judah will become a terror to Egypt. They're going to die there. Everyone to whom is mentioned will be in dread of it because of the purpose of the Lord of hosts will be purposing against them. So after Egypt's army is destroyed, they're going to be easy prey for the Antichrist. And that's why it says the Antichrist at the middle of the tribulation is going to come into the land of Israel, and he's going to go down and plunder Egypt, according to Daniel 11, verses 41 to 43. So Egypt's going to join with this North African confederacy. They're going to lead it. They're going to be part of the Gog-Magog invasion with Russia. They're going to be destroyed. The Antichrist, then they're going to be easy prey for him because their army's been wiped out. And then Egypt will become a desolation. Again, that's Isaiah chapter 19, verses 16 and 17. But here's the good news.